Hi, my name's Dakota and I was diagnosed with autism when I was 26 years old.
My name is Nicole Connolly. I am 35 years old. I'll be 36 on April the 9th. And I use the pronouns of she, they.
My name is Angie and I was 24 years old when I was diagnosed autistic and ADHD. I also have anxiety and pathological demand avoidance, also known as PDA.
Hi, my name's Nicole and I was 27 when I was identified as autistic and ADHD.
I was identified as autistic in my early teenage years by family members and family friends.
Hi, my name is Anicia and I'm 21 years old. I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder in 2019 when I was 18 years old.
Hi, my name is Shazzy. I'm a clinical nurse consultant, counselling psychotherapist and credentialed mental health nurse.
Hi, my name is Tanisha. I was diagnosed as autistic at 10 and a half.
My name is Nasita Blake. I'm 22 years old. I was diagnosed as autistic of the Asperger's variety when I was 3 years old, so I'm a bit of a unicorn in that respect.
I also have generalized anxiety disorder, and in 2018 I also had an eating disorder, specifically anorexia nervosa, but I've worked hard to have fully recovered from that.
I also have anxiety and depression.
And I also have anxiety and probably ADHD. That's still yet to be determined.
I also have anxiety and depression, which I believe stem from my autism throughout the years. So that's a fun combination to have comorbid with.
I have a few other co-conditions with the autism and ADHD, like everybody else does. Fibromyalgia, there's a lot of physical conditions I have. I'm currently a wheelchair user. I have specific learning difficulties too, specifically dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and did I say ADHD already?
I also have OCD, a tic disorder, and atypical anorexia nervosa.
Throughout my life, I've been given many labels, including lazy, daydreamer, outgoing and impatient, but also shy and not talkative. I think once someone places a label on you, it's hard for them to see you differently and for them to see just how much you are capable of.
So growing up especially, I was called a daydreamer, shy, sensitive and special a lot of the time. Also lazy is another one that comes up and still comes up quite commonly by people.
People would label me as distracted, overdramatic, sensitive, kind-hearted, curious and talkative.
Previously, I've been described as weird, oversensitive and dramatic.
One instance I can think of is when I was in, I think, year 7 and very stressed out by school. You know, high school is a stressful time, let alone when you're autistic. And all the kids in the class were just not quiet. They were just talking so much. And I remember just feeling so overwhelmed because they weren't doing what the teacher was saying. And I was so upset by this and so overwhelmed by this that I snapped and got a bit angry. And from then on, a label I was given was that I had anger issues. And now that I think about it, it wasn't anger issues. I was on the verge of a meltdown.
Well, so by embracing that side of who I am, and while at the same time not letting it control who I am and what I do, it has helped me to be able to move forward in life with work, with raising a child, and also helping other kids that have been on the spectrum to show them that they don't have to be put in a little box and they can achieve whatever they want to achieve.
I was considered a daydreamer. I was considered a disturbance to the class. I used my humour a lot to get through things and became a class clown. or I stayed quietly in the corner and didn't utter a word.
I've been called overdramatic, I've been called a hypochondriac, I've been called sensitive, I've been called shy, I've been called quirky, I've been called weird. I've been called every negative connotation that you can probably call someone. And not all of them are always bad to be. Like, it's not always bad to be someone who's quirky. It's not always bad to be someone who's shy. It's not always bad to be someone who's sensitive. But when you're called them, you're generally called them in a negative way, and the person's tone is negative. And you put it together that, like, oh, they don't like you.
Some labels that I was given growing up were shy, oversensitive, and rude. In high school, I was described as happy-go-lucky, a girl that lived in her own little world, and I was a daydreamer. Throughout my whole life, I've been described as a perfectionist. And as an adult in the workforce, I've been told that I love attention. However, that's not actually the case. I don't like it, but I am very impulsive and I lack a filter at times, so it makes it look like I lack attention.
Sensitive, that's a classic one, which I am sensitive, like, I'll own that. Blunt, stubborn. I am stubborn, but, you know, often when people say that you're stubborn, it's not in a nice way. Direct is a good one, I guess, and, you know, too much, that's another label, that you're too much of something, and, you know, and that's often from excessive masking, like that my mask is too much. I'm like, geez, all right, I can't win here. So all different kinds of labels, and none of them help. Just call people by their positive attributes. No need to name call, no need to do any of that.
I have never embraced who I truly was until I got this diagnosis. I never understood why I was different. I was constantly not knowing why I did this and not that, why I kept on having meltdowns, why I kept being overwhelmed by the noise and the light and needing to just go sit away from people and not able to deal with school or university. And once I had this diagnosis, it's like this door just opened up and I suddenly knew, oh, that's why.
I'm proud to be autistic, and while ADHD is still a constant mess in my head, it does add some fun to the mix. It's the reason I've bungee jumped, and the reason that sometimes I can be spontaneous. Before my autism diagnosis, I often wondered what it would be like to be neurotypical, and despite everything I've overcome and all the challenges life has thrown my way, everything I am today is because of my neurodivergent identity, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
When I was 14, we did mock interviews at school, and I had done so much to prepare for this mock job, this fake job, and thought I had done a really good job and things like that, and I was so nervous going in, and then at the end of the assessment I didn't get the job, and the only reason put on the rubric was my inability to maintain eye contact, and that's why I wasn't given this metaphorical job. And from then on, I was 14 at the time, I remember thinking so clearly, okay, well, I can't be myself. That's not going to happen if I want to get a job or I want to do anything. So
at university, I studied primary school teaching, and I clearly remember a class focused on ASD. As I listened to all the traits, I remember thinking, now this describes me perfectly. And I also remember thinking, hang on a minute, wait, do people actually make eye contact? Because I definitely do not. As an adult, I was really struggling to fit in. I knew I was different to those around me. My strong sense of values, my honesty, my energy levels, my creativity and my passion, I was just really different. And I got to a point in my life that I needed to see a new psychiatrist. And I had written her an extensive list of 50-something things that she should know about me. And I had written down these things on the advice from my GP, who knew I would sit there silently when meeting a new person if I hadn't written down anything prior to that session. She didn't mean 50-something things, she just meant a few things, but I misunderstood what she meant. And after reading that list, the new psychiatrist asked me, have you ever been diagnosed with ASD? And I said no, however, it wouldn't surprise me if I were to be on the spectrum. And so I underwent the formal testing, and it actually came as a huge relief to me that I was on the spectrum, because it meant that I now had a community of people that I belonged to.
I'd say I have embraced my neurodivergent identity, but that's only a recent thing. So even though I was diagnosed at such a young age, and that is a rarity, I haven't always been comfortable within myself, and I did, I'm trying not to, heavily mask when I was younger. So things like that, and just sort of the use of functioning labels and things like that definitely contributed to my sort of feeling of not owning my identity, because I felt like I needed to perform or exceed a certain standard. And that's another thing, like so many of us are mediocre at things. We don't need to be great at everything.
Only within the last few years, the diagnosis was a difficult process, as it is for everybody. Having that diagnosis can be quite stigmatizing, but I've learned to be my authentic self through it. It's a bit difficult within my profession. So I went and worked by myself, and I've been able to fully embrace my authentic self since then and help other people to do that too. I work within the neurodivergent space, so I help a lot of other people who are autistic, ADHD, and have specific learning disorders as well.
I have embraced my neurodivergent identity as it helped me to actually understand me and to be able to understand it's not me that's causing these problems. It's just this extra facet of who I am. It's not my fault. It's just these extra bits and pieces. And since I've embraced who I truly was with my diagnosis, I have suddenly had this whole new world of friends open up. I've had people who want to actually be around me. I've had people who end up just wanting to orbit around me for the first time, because I'm not hiding who I am anymore behind a mask, and being able to just say, here's me, this is what I am, how are you?
I only really started to embrace my identity as an autistic a year after I was diagnosed, roughly, as I just didn't really understand it at the time, and I was still working through my recovery from my eating disorder. Then after recovering from that, I started to recognize some of the actions and traits that I actually do that are different and made me different from others. And it really made me realize that how and why I do these things. Well, it's because I fall on the autism spectrum.
As an educator, embracing my identity has not only helped me, but it assists my students. I am openly autistic, and I hope that they know that I am there for them and it's okay to be autistic. Neurodiverse brains are okay. I think that sometimes this causes overcompensation. I am now towards the other end of the scale. I am very open about myself, even when people don't want to listen, because I don't always pick up on those cues. I prefer bright, colourful, out there clothing and being comfortable. People occasionally make snide comments about this, but I know who I am now.
I didn't quite own it for a long time until COVID hit, and I realised actually I'm really burnt out. I'm really overwhelmed by a lot of this, and a lot of the change was so overwhelming. And I sought support from an awesome psychologist and sort of been on this journey of unmasking and accepting myself. And it does take time. Like, I'm not going to say it's, super easy to do. It's not. And that's even with a diagnosis. So I can't imagine what it'd be like for people who are late diagnosed or don't get a diagnosis, what that experience feels like for them.
I fully embrace who I am, and I am not embarrassed at all. I really I say to other people, I'm like, yeah, I'm autistic. Yeah, I have ASD. Yes, this is why I function this way. Deal with it.
My experience of masking at school was pretty intense. So, even though I knew I was different for a very long time, I still felt excluded, and I was excluded and misunderstood and things like that. And even though I knew there was a reason for it, it didn't make it any easier to exist as a different person to the norm. And I remember actually thinking in school that, you know, I'd be in primary school and not playing with anyone, or just want to hang out with the teachers or walk around by myself. And I'd actually think to myself, like, surely out of billions of people, there's someone out there who's experiencing the same thing I am, but also shares my life. So shares my name and my parents' names, and in kind of like a parallel universe situation, which of course isn't true. So that's another thing. We are also individual and so different. And that's the point of neurodiversity. That is what it is. But I think what brings us together is the fact that we do have some shared commonalities in the autistic community, which is awesome. And yeah, I think it's really important to find those connections so that you don't feel so alone.
Before my diagnosis during my schooling years, I would mask a lot and mimic a lot of other traits from other people, thinking that that's what I needed to be like and be doing. I always felt quite different from others and thought of myself as weird, so I tried my best to fit in what I thought was normal behavior, so that others would like me and so I could make friends. But I've always had a hard time maintaining friendships. I've jumped a lot of friendship groups during high school and now, and it's been really hard for me to maintain that. But I'm hoping that I can still find some long life friends in the future.
I definitely masked at school, and I think it made it hard to make friends. When I didn't mask, people weren't sure of how to be around me because I often said I was too much. Once I learned how to mask and behave in a way that made me have friends, I found myself struggling to always uphold that mask, especially outside of school. It meant that people often didn't want to see me outside of school, and I didn't stay in contact with many friends from school either once we graduated high school. It did cause a lot of anxiety and depression while I was at school because I was aware that despite having friends, I still didn't have friends. I was aware people didn't like me, thought that I was weird and different, and didn't understand why I acted the way I did or why I said things without thinking about it. It's easier now that I don't have to be around people all day, every day. The friends I have are those who like me for me and accept my autistic self. There is less pressure to mask, and while the social anxiety is still there, therapy has helped with that tremendously.
As someone who made their way through school, not knowing why other students refused to hang out and play with them, invite them to things, and why other students singled them out for being quirky or weird, it was hard. I definitely masked or camouflaged at school, although I don't think I knew that was what I was doing. As a preteen and a teen, you just want to fit in. You don't want to be seen as the weird kid with no friends. Thus, my naivety, innocence, and thirst to be liked played a huge part in my life.
Masking was something I did a lot at school and at university, and it was obvious that I was masking because teenagers can tell when something's not quite right, and my mask never fit quite right, and teenagers can tell, and that something's off, something's odd, something's weird, something's not quite right with this one. And so when they recognize that something is off and not normal, they reject it and they push it away, and it's the outcast. They don't think it's cool, they don't think it's fun, they think it's weird, they think it's unusual, they just don't want to be around you because they know that it's not real. It could be, if we're doing a legitimate, it's like covering this much of the face and then this part is slipping, and it's clear that it's slipping through more than I intended it to be. Masking isn't the end all and be all. You don't have to mask to be able to fit in, and I made more friends once I really embraced who I really was than I had ever made, and I made more genuine friends, and I just became more me than I ever did without pretending that I was someone else. And people are drawn to that more than they were drawn to any other person that I ever was.
Executive functioning has impacted me in many ways growing up. So in primary school, I would cry every day, and especially when routine changed. I remember once my teacher was away and I had a massive meltdown. They actually could not get me into the classroom, and I had to spend the whole day next door in the classroom with a familiar teacher because they could not get me into class with a substitute teacher. And when I got to high school, things started to become even more difficult for me. I remember reading textbooks in class but not taking in a word that they were saying because my mind was always somewhere else, usually on the environment. And when the teacher would ask what it was about, I couldn't tell them. But I could tell them about what was happening outside the window or about the clock ticking, but that was never the question. And when it came to year 12, I was at a stage where I couldn't complete any of my work during class time for most of my subjects. And I was told by a lot of my teachers that I wouldn't pass if I didn't produce more work. My English teacher at the time had kept me back after one class, and she asked me what I wanted to do after I'd finished school. And I told her I wanted to be a primary school teacher. And she said to me that I'd still be able to make the marks. And I was really grateful for that comment, because it wasn't that I wasn't completing my work because I was trying to rebel. I wasn't completing my work because I was a perfectionist. I didn't know how to prioritize. I didn't want to try and fail. Everything was just really overwhelming for me. So my solution was to just not try at all. So for her to tell me that it was going to be all right comforted me in a time that I actually needed it the most.
My experience with executive functioning at school was not a great one. I was a C grade student, so I managed to keep average, but my focus and concentration wasn't good. I was considered a daydreamer. I was considered a disturbance to the class. I used my humour a lot to get through things and became a class clown. Or I stayed quietly in the corner and didn't utter a word. I was actually selectively mute for the first 6-7 years of my life.
I probably overcompensate here too. I utilise those skills and areas I am efficient at to somewhat mask those areas that I struggle with. For example, I am brilliant at colour coordination, schedules and organising myself, because doing this allows me to firmly grasp at a sense of control over small things, even when I'm in environments where I do not have control over the larger picture. I, however, am not so strong in the areas of emotions, initiating tasks and conversations, and prioritizing tasks. I am harsh on myself, so it affects my mental health because I am constantly in a state of anxiety thinking, am I doing okay? Or am I doing this right? I won't ask you because my brain has convinced me that asking for help is a sign of weakness.
For me, it would be all of them, but if I had to pick one, it would be the Rain Man stereotype, because that is so outdated.
I wish that people would understand that it's not just children who have autism. Those children who get diagnosed with autism, they grow up into adults and they don't outgrow the autism. Clearly, I never did. I got diagnosed when I was 26, and I know women who get diagnosed when they're 60, or even men when they're 60. It's just women tend to be the underdiagnosed category.
We have to be one or the other in terms of like absolute extremes, like genius or quite disabled by our surroundings. You know, a lot of us are very mediocre at a lot of things. You know, when you use the term Asperger's, which I don't identify with anymore, but when that term was used, it was used as like genius or super intelligent or like Einstein. It's like, I'm really not great at maths. I'm okay at a lot of things, but I do have skills in other things. So what I'd really like to see people focus on is, rather than this sort of one or the other linear spectrum situation, understanding that the spiky profile of having lots of strengths and lots of challenges as well, that is autism. That is what it is. That is the point, and things like that.
Being autistic limits your ability to achieve. As a primary school teacher, I have so many parents concerned that once their child has a diagnosis of autism, that their child now has limits to what they can achieve, not only at school, but beyond school. And it's not until they hear that I'm autistic that they tell me that they now have hope for their child.
One of the biggest stereotypes I want to break is this image of functioning labels. You cannot know where someone is in regards to their abilities in 5 minutes in a classroom.
I wish people could just see that being autistic just means seeing the world differently. And we just have different strengths. It doesn't limit us at all. Our thinking is just different, and the world needs different thinking. Without different minds, new technology wouldn't be invented, new science wouldn't be discovered, art would be limited. All minds, all thinking create this world. Autism isn't a label to be feared. It's a label to embrace. It's a label to be proud of.
I've learned a lot over my lifetime that I want to give to the next generation, and I use this with my own children. I have 2 autistic ADHD children with specific learning disabilities who are 6 and 8, and they'd love to talk to you if they could right now. But being themselves, being able to self-advocate is the biggest lesson that I've learned, and I've taught my children to be self-advocates, because no one else is going to talk for them at school, within that school arena. I can go in there as a parent, but it's hard, even as an expert in an autistic spectrum disorders, and I hate the word disorders, so can we use the word autistic instead, please? But even as an expert in autism, I can't go in there and create an environment for my children in school that is suitable for them. Only they can do that. They're there every day. So I've taught them to self-advocate and be good at that. And the teachers are very impressed at my son, who is very able to go in and advocate for himself and say that he is overwhelmed or what he needs right now.
I have never embraced who I truly was until I got this diagnosis. I never understood why I was different. I was constantly not knowing why I did this and not that, why I kept on having meltdowns, why I kept being overwhelmed by the noise and the light and needing to just go sit away from people and not able to deal with school or university. And once I had this diagnosis, it's like this door just opened up and I suddenly knew, oh, that's why. And being able to actually embrace and understand and say, it's not me, it's my autism that has caused these meltdowns, and being able to separate it from not my fault to saying it's just because of my neurodivergence. It's not anything that I've done to cause this. It's a very freeing moment to be able to recognize that and embrace that it's not me, and being able to actually embrace me as well for the first time. It's very freeing and very liberating just for who you are, to be able to know that all these problems that you've had come down to a diagnosis of autism.
One thing that I've learned in my lifetime is that it's better not to mask. It is a lot easier to mask to fit in. However, you don't find friends from masking, not true friends anyway. You find true friends, the people that you actually belong with, by being your authentic self, as hard as that is.
I frequently reflect upon this time in my life and wonder what would have been different if terms such as autism and neurodiversity were as widely known as they are today. The word neurodivergent in itself was not coined until the mid to late 90s. Thus, as someone who graduated from high school in 2004, that word was not only not on my radar, but it was not on the radar of school staff.
One of the biggest things for me is I got labelled as, the autistic one or the too hard. And that made one teacher in particular growing up keep me in the too hard box, and they never taught me. So that would be my big thing, is to not label your students, because the moment you do, they're forever labelled and stuck in that box in your head. And you don't want them to end up in the too hard box.
To be aware of when students are masking, because they will mask, especially if they're not comfortable. And allow them to stim. If you're a junior teacher, make sure you have a sensory wall. It is so helpful. And let the kids use that sensory wall. If you're in older classrooms, have a range of fidget toys and sensory objects. Include things that smell in that. Each autistic person is different, so don't treat us all the same. It's not always obvious when somebody is on the spectrum, but we all do struggle in different ways.
The world is not geared for us, particularly in the working world. So if you're setting autistic children up to become autistic adults, know that the world is not going to greet them with the same sort of open armedness as maybe you have, which is really tough. And it also means that we have to advocate for ourselves a lot of the time. So I really challenge everyone to put the onus on those who are responsible for supporting us to make the changes to become more neuro-inclusive.
I want teachers to know that we need time and to give us time. I take a while to take in auditory information and even more time to take in numbers. Learn the students' learning style. If they learn best with visual support, then ensure things are written down for them or present tasks in different ways. Especially if the student has ADHD or mental health conditions, they may need extra time to submit assignments. Masking is hard, and not everyone can go home and continue to do schoolwork for another 4 hours. It doesn't mean they're lazy or a bad student. It just means they need that extra support.
To learn a lot about neurodiversity. My school this year wouldn't help my children celebrate their neurodiversity. I found that quite offensive. But I'm still trying. I go into a lot of schools with my clients and I help them understand neurodiversity, and I help them understand what neurodiversity is, how it feels from the inside out, how it feels from a parent of somebody who is neurodivergent view as well. And then after all my explanations and my teachings, I let them know that I'm neurodivergent. And that comes as a bit of a shock to them, because they see autism and ADHD as a really debilitating disability.
They're not trying. They want to learn. More often than not, they want to learn. They want to be there. They want to learn. They want to get better. They want to be a part of everything. They just want to be involved, and they're trying. They're trying harder than probably most people are in that classroom. they're just struggling so hard with everything else. Let them have their fidget toys. Let them fiddle around. Don't make them sit still. If they need to get up and pace to concentrate, just put them at the back of the room and they can pace at the back of the room. If they need to fiddle or something, if they just need to put noise-cancelling headphones in when you're doing quiet work, that's fine. It means that they're at least focusing on what they need to do. And that's the most important thing about learning. They're just doing it a different way than your neurotypical students are.
The teachers, I ask that you support your students by getting to know them on a level that's deeper than knowing they struggle with fractions. Be that safe person for them where they don't feel like they need to mask.
So much. As a parent myself, being a parent to neurodivergence is one of the hardest jobs that you will ever do, but it is one of the most worthwhile jobs you will ever do. Your children, whichever level they're at, level 1, level 2, level 3, have so much to say, and saying isn't always verbalizing. So please know that you may need other ways to communicate apart from speaking. Speaking isn't the only way to communicate.
I would love if parents would they need to understand that the brain of someone with ASD or ADHD is wired differently than neurotypical people, and people with autism and ADHD just do not interpret information and things the same way as neurotypical people. Like if I was to compare myself to my siblings, for example, the way I interpret information is very different to the way they do. My little brother also has ADHD, and I can also compare him to his twin brother who does not have ADHD, and the way that he interprets information compared to his twin brother is very vastly different. Same as myself, I am different from other people, and parents should definitely research into this, because wanting to deal with your kids the way you'd think for a neurotypical person won't work as well as for someone with ASD and ADHD. So I strongly suggest that you guys do research and find tips that can help support your kids in a way that works for them.
Is that it's all right if your child is autistic. The world is still their oyster. There are so many support systems in place that you can have access to. Access these support systems. Be proud of your child. If you believe we don't have any limitations, then we won't believe we have any limitations. Believe in us and we will believe in ourselves.
Adults, like your autistic or ADHD child is going to grow into an autistic/ADHD adult, and they're still going to have the exact same struggles as now. They might be a bit better at handling them, but they're still going to have them. And even though they might seem better or less autistic or less ADHD, they don't grow out of it. It's still going to be there for them. And I think you still need to be there for them as they continue growing up and growing older.
That we're different. So if you have an autistic child or a child that you think might be neurodivergent, but well, for whatever reason you haven't, sought confirmation or whatever that is, or in the process of that, or think they won't know, they do know. We all know that we're different.
That autism isn't scary, and it isn't something that needs changing. Autistic individuals need love and support, and sometimes accommodations to make things that little bit easier for them. But once you learn to embrace your child's interests and unique abilities, you'll see they're capable of anything. I mean, I bought my first house at 21 and now run a business with 6 employees. The only limit kids have is the limits others place on them. I learned to adapt. My parents supported me through all my life choices. They stepped in when I needed help, but they never took opportunities away from me. And a lot of that has helped me to where I am today.
I love yellow ladybugs. The autistic community is vast and very welcoming, especially to those who are as yet to be diagnosed or undiagnosed or misdiagnosed, as happens quite a lot.
So Treehouse in Geelong introduced me to people my own age and other girls that were on the spectrum as well, and from that we've formed great friendships. We're all still in contact now, and just being together around each other, naturally being able to be ourselves, is something that has helped us all and helped me quite a lot with friendships and just being around people that are very like-minded and understand you better than your other friends would.
I continue to be a part of the autistic community in any way I can. I especially try to support organisations where autistic individuals lead, because no one knows autism better than autistic people themselves. It's helped me be a part of a community, to feel like I belong, and to continue to inspire and support the younger generation. I hope that one day autistic kids don't feel like they have nowhere to go, and that the information they need is easily and readily available to them, and I'm proud to be a part of that change.
Being part of the autistic community, specifically autistic-led environments, has allowed me to be proud of who I am and has assisted me in knowing that it is okay to reach out for help in areas in which I struggle. I wish everyone had support like this and felt safe.
Being connected to the autistic culture is really important, to know that there's others like us out there and that we have similar attributes and abilities as well as deficiencies as well. People see us as, and I hate this word, high functioning. We're not, even though we are able to function and are really good at our jobs. For instance, I'm great at what I do, but my house is a mess, and as you can see, my office is very untidy. So having that executive functioning ability is impossible for me. I work very closely with the young community, and my hacks are to be accepting of yourself. There's not really a hack, it's a bit of hard work, but just to be yourself and be accepting of yourself and let other people be accepting of that. So being your authentic self is the best advice that I could possibly give you.
Making sure to give yourself a break. Give yourself your time and something that you love to do, so that you don't overwork yourself, because schoolwork is always going to be overwhelming and nothing will ever change that. So just make sure you give time for yourself.
One tip I have for young autistic ADHD students is to colour code and organise everything from the start. Colour makes sense in my head, and it helped with the organisational skills throughout high school. I also kept colour the same through school, so for example, English was always blue, religion was pink, maths was orange, and to this day I still remember the colour that I associated with them. Also, if you can, take classes you're going to enjoy or are in your strengths. Despite not knowing what I was going to do outside of high school, I took subjects I enjoyed and was able to easily memorise materials. This meant I had things to look forward to, and I didn't feel like I was constantly trying to remember things, because much of it was interesting topics that I researched in my own time anyway.
Don't compare yourself to others, because what works for one person won't necessarily work for you. So you need to try out things until you find ways that suit you. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. It's okay to ask for help. I wish I had asked for help a lot earlier. It's okay to ask a million questions. That's something else I would never do. I would never ask questions, and I wish I did. And ask your teacher to present things differently for you. You are not being annoying by asking. You're getting what you need, and you deserve that.
Please do not be ashamed of having a diagnosis, whether it's ASD or ADHD or whatever it is, because it does not negatively define you in any way other than that you are special and you are not at all inferior to neurotypical people. I really strongly want you to embrace who you are and be proud of it and use it to your advantage.
The neurodivergent generation, you are amazing, you are incredible, and you will do amazing things in life. Don't let anyone tell you there are things you can't do, because you can do anything.